Before we go any further, if you're the kind of person who studies war not for spectacle but for lessons about power, collapse, survival and human decision-making, make sure you subscribe to Hidden Histories WWII right now. This channel exists for viewers who want depth, not surface-level myths. Today's episode isn't about who had the bigger army or the louder speeches. It's about why the Axis powers, despite early dominance and terrifying momentum, were structurally doomed long before Berlin fell. Stay with me, because once you see the war this way, you'll never analyze conflict the same again. Most people are taught that the Axis lost World War II because they fought too many enemies or ran out of resources. That's not wrong, but it's incomplete. The real reason the Axis lost was that their entire war effort was built on short-term conquest rather than long-term survival. Germany, Japan, and Italy planned for quick victories that would force political collapse. When those collapses didn't happen, their systems had no resilience. For historians and survival-minded thinkers, this is the first lesson. Any strategy that depends on everything going perfectly is not a strategy. It's a gamble. The Axis entered the war believing speed could replace sustainability. Germany's Blitzkrieg worked brilliantly in Poland and France because it exploited unprepared opponents and fragile political systems. But Blitzkrieg was never designed for prolonged industrial war. It burned fuel, wore down equipment, and exhausted trained personnel faster than Germany could replace them. When the war stretched into years instead of months, the German economy couldn't adapt quickly enough. For modern planners, whether military or civilian, this is a reminder that systems built for speed often collapse under endurance stress. One of the most decisive failures was the Axis misunderstanding industrial warfare. World War II was not won by battlefield brilliance alone, but by factories, logistics, and repair capacity. The Allies, especially the United States and Soviet Union, treated war production as a science. They simplified designs, standardized parts, and focused on output over perfection. Germany, by contrast, obsessed over technically superior weapons that were slow to produce and difficult to maintain. The Tiger tank was formidable, but it required enormous resources and broke down constantly. The practical lesson here is clear. In any survival scenario, reliable tools outperform impressive ones every time. Leadership culture also played a central role in the Axis collapse. Decision-making in Germany and Japan became increasingly centralized and ideological. Officers learned pretty quickly that telling leaders what they wanted to hear was, well, a lot safer than actually telling them the truth. Hitler, you see, routinely ignored the advice of experienced generals, choosing instead to overrule battlefield realities with, honestly, political fantasy. Japan's military leadership, for example, followed these really rigid honor codes that discouraged retreat, even when retreat was, strategically necessary. Systems that punish honest feedback, well, they eventually lose touch with reality. And when reality finally arrives, it tends to arrive violently. Another critical factor was the Axis failure to secure and protect their supply lines. Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union, in particular, stretched logistics well beyond breaking point. Fuel shortages, inadequate winter equipment, and overstretched rail networks crippled entire armies. Japan faced a similar fate in the Pacific, where American submarines systematically destroyed merchant shipping. By 1944, Japan had factories but no raw materials, and soldiers but no food. For survivalists, this reinforces a timeless principle. Supply chains are more important than stockpiles, and mobility means nothing without resupply. The Axis also misunderstood their enemies. German racial ideology dismissed Slavic populations as inferior, turning potential collaborators into determined resistance fighters. In occupied territories, brutality fueled partisan warfare that drained manpower and morale. Japan's treatment of civilians across Asia hardened resistance and ensured that Allied forces were seen as liberators rather than invaders. The lesson here applies far beyond war. How you treat people under your control determines whether they support your system or work tirelessly to destroy it from within. Strategically, the Axis failed to prioritize defensively once the war turned against them. Germany continued launching offensives long after it should have shifted to strategic defense. Japan, remained committed to decisive naval battles, even after losing experienced pilots it simply could not replace. The Allies, in contrast, adapted constantly, learning from failure and, adjusting their doctrine as the war went on. Adaptability, not ideology, is what actually keeps systems alive under pressure. Anyone preparing for uncertain futures should frankly take this quite seriously. Rigidity is fatal when conditions change. Perhaps the most overlooked reason the Axis lost was in fact morale erosion. Not battlefield morale, but rather societal morale. As bombing campaigns intensified and shortages deepened, civilian populations, they lost faith in inevitable victory. Propaganda could not fill empty stomachs or rebuild destroyed cities. Meanwhile, Allied populations, despite suffering, saw tangible progress and industrial momentum. Hope backed by evidence is far more powerful than slogans. In any long-term struggle, visible progress matters more than rhetoric. When you step back, the Axis didn't lose World War II in 1945. They lost it the moment their strategies rejected sustainability, adaptability, and honest assessment. They built war machines designed to intimidate, not endure. For historians, this reframes the conflict as a study in systemic failure. For survivalists, it's a warning about overconfidence, fragile planning, and ignoring logistics in favor of spectacle. If this deeper, unsanitized approach to World War II is why you're here, make sure you subscribe to Hidden Histories WWII. Share this episode with others who take history seriously and stay with the channel. Because understanding how empires collapse isn't just about the past. It's about preparing for the future.